No matter what variation of pool, snooker or billiards you play, there will be something in this video for you. So even if you don't play on a table like this, don't turn off just yet. So tip number one is make sure you watch to the end and find out exactly how many tips I can cram into this video, because I guarantee you there'll be something in here for you. Sometimes you'll want to develop a ball off the cushion. For example, let's say I want to try and get the 8 ball away from here. It is worth noting the position of your object ball because it can determine whether you should or can in fact do it. So for example, if I've got a shot here and I try and bring the 8 ball out, then you see I get a double kiss and it stays there. A much better position to get into that ball from is if your ball is further down here. Now when they're near the cushion, it can be hard to get them away from the cushion. So it's much better to play it from a shot like here and try and get the 8 ball over the middle pocket. Just like that. It's really important to have your elbow in a straight line with the cue. You see here I hit the cue ball hard and I don't impart any side spin whatsoever. I've hit it dead in the centre. But if you look at this, I've put my elbow out the way slightly, and the natural position of your cue arm makes you want to cue across the ball. If you put it in slightly, it does the exact same thing but on the opposite side. When you put your cue to the cue ball, you want your back elbow in about a 90-degree position. You can see that angle that I'm creating there. It's about 90 degrees. Now if you put it in that position, then it will help you time your shots better. When it comes to chalk, my recommendation would be tail. It is slightly on the expensive side, but it does last for ages. It gives you the grip that you would want, but as a bonus, there is very little mess off it, which stops a lot of kicks. My personal recommendation is either the V10 or the Pyro. Both are excellent. If you're playing side spin off 2 cushions, then you need to pay particularly close attention to the angle that the cue ball is going onto the second cushion at, because it's the second cushion that's really important. And let me show you why. Let's say I have got a narrow angle here. I'm going to play to the chalk and I'm going to play this plain ball. If I hit it plain ball, you can see the cue ball comes to here, okay? Let's play that same shot again, but I'm going to put left hand spin on the cue ball. If I do that, you can see that I widen it quite a lot and I hit down there. Now that is quite a shallow angle onto the first cushion. It's almost wider on the second cushion. Now if we reverse that, so let's play from here this time. So we've got a steep angle going onto the first cushion. Now if I play that plain ball onto the chalk, then I get the cue ball pretty much in the pocket. Now let's play it with left hand side. Now remember the first one I widened angle, but if I play it with left hand side this time, you can see I narrow it. So that second cushion is so important when playing with side spin. On your last backswing, you want to bring the cue back as far as you plan to push it through. So if you're playing a shot quite soft, you're not going to push the cue through a lot. So you just want almost a half backswing, just like that, and through the ball. And if you plan to hit it harder, then you're going to bring the cue further back and you're going to push it through further forward. If you've got a ball that's in the jaws of the pocket and you want to get the cue ball away from there, then you don't want to hit it hard because the cue ball just kind of sticks. What you want to do instead is put a bit of side spin on it. So I want the cue ball to go down this way, so I'm going to put left hand side spin on it. I can hit it much softer and the cue ball will go much further. When you put your thumb next to your bridge hand, you notice that it creates this little line. What a lot of players do will play their cue across that line, which means it's not that stable. What to do instead is rotate your bridge hand slightly and point that line right at the cue ball. It creates a much more stable bridge. I get asked about my cue and what type of tips that I use quite a lot. Now I've currently got a Century Pro G2 on there and I am enjoying it. But when it comes to tips, it's quite a personal choice. My recommendation would be to buy it from a reputable seller. No matter what tip you want to put on there, buy from a genuine seller. I've bought from eBay in the past and I've had tons of fakes, and you can spot the difference. It's not worth trying to save a few pounds and getting sold a fake because they're rubbish. Just spend the money and buy from a genuine seller. When I first started working out where to aim with side spin, then I would use it on shots like this where I couldn't possibly miss. Now, if the position allowed it, I would play this shot with side spin. So, for example, if I put bottom left on this, then I can pot it and I can get the cue ball out of there. But what you want to do when playing that shot is pay attention to where you're aiming and then where the cue ball ends up. And you'll start to learn how much the cue ball is thrown off when you play with side. On almost every shot, you want a really loose backhand. You'll see here my fingers are barely touching the cue, and as it comes back, they stretch out. This keeps your cue in a straight line, and then at the point of contact, make sure you grip to get that action on it. Okay, the parallel shift system for getting out of snookers. What we want to do is make contact with the black ball, so we take the midpoint between the cue ball and the object ball, which is about there. Take that point and point it to the middle of the pocket. Now that's an important angle that we've created with our cue. We want to carefully lift it, parallel shift it. We now want to make contact with that point of the cushion, and if we do that, then we will contact the 8-ball. If you haven't done so already, then please subscribe to the channel because I produce a lot of content that will help no matter what variation of pool, snooker or billiards that you play. To stop the cue ball flying off the table in a cut break, you want to hit just below centre striking and take some of the pace off it. Because you're going straight into the pack as opposed to the front ball break, you can get away with taking pace off it and getting a really good split. As you can see here, I've left myself quite an easy finish. When you're on your last backswing, make sure that you pull it back nice and slow. Even if you're hitting the shot hard, you still want a nice slow backswing. Here's a challenge for you. If you've got a tip that I've not covered in this video, then pop it in the comments below. It will help others who maybe don't know that tip, but as a little bonus, I promise I will record another video like this and I will include your tip and a shout out to you, no matter how bizarre it may be. A good stance is where your feet are about shoulder width apart, and it helps to step into a shot. For a right-handed person, they should step with their right foot first. For a left-handed person, step with your left. And this is what you do. Take a half step with your right foot, your right leg is straight and your foot is pointed about 2 o'clock. Then take a full step with your left foot. It should be pointed towards the cue ball and it should be bent. And then when you're down on the shot, you'll notice that your cue is over your back foot. The infamous outside edge system for doubles. Basically, if I want to double that ball in there, what I need to do is stand square onto it. If I then look at the edge of it and extend that point to the cushion, I want to make the object ball hit that point in the cushion. And if I do that, I can double it in there. Pretty cool, right? So the follow-up question that I get to that is, how far down the table will that work? Now, I tested it out on another video and you can get beyond the halfway point of the cushion. It's probably to about there it works. You'll be able to double it in there. Now, if you've got the ball there, you're probably not going to try and double it there. You'll double it here. So to demonstrate that it works, I will put it halfway up the cushion and we'll use the outside edge system. So let's extend that point, which is to about there. Now, if I hit that point, I will make it in there. Just like that. If you're starting out at this game, then the best way to level up would be to do solo practice. Don't practice with someone else, that will get you match sharp, but if you practice on your own, then you're playing far more shots, which is best for getting you to the next level. When you start to become a bit more advanced and want to play more difficult shots with side spin, then you still need to learn how much the cue ball is being thrown off. So if I'm faced with a shot like this, for example, and I play it with left hand side spin, the cue ball is going to be thrown off to the right. Now what I would do to start off with is I would aim to hit the object ball and that knuckle. The cue ball will be thrown off to the right, so hopefully by the time it gets there, it should be closer to the pocket. Now if it's not, the next time I play a shot like that, I would just micro adjust to make sure I pot it. If you've got a ball on the cushion, then there will be some places where it's impossible to double it from. You see here, I've tried to get on my left hand ball, but if I try and double this, I'm going to get a double kiss. Therefore it's impossible to double from this position. What you want to do with a shot like that is leave yourself a reverse double, or in this instance, a back double. See, I'll leave the cue ball short. It means that I can hit this much thinner and get the ball bouncing back towards the middle pocket, making this shot possible. Shots down the cushion are so much easier when you play them with side, and I find it doesn't matter if you play left or right. Whenever you've got a finish on, you want to work your way back from the black ball. You see this one that's highlighted here? It's a good connecting ball to get on the black ball. So if I go from there and work my way backwards, you can see that this creates almost a natural order to pot these balls in. We start at the top end of the table and we slowly make our way down until we're on that connecting ball, and that's the one that gives us the best position on the black ball. So always work your way backwards. You can use a second ball to help you try and get position. For example, let's say I want to pot the red ball. Now you might think, because I'm going to cannon this yellow, my cue ball is going to stay down there and I can't get on the black. But if I hit it a bit harder with screw back, then the screw will hit off the yellow, cue ball will come to here, and I can get it down that end of the table. Just like that. I get asked about cue recommendations quite a lot as well, and it's a really personal choice. But if you're a beginner or an amateur and you're looking to take your game to the next level, then I think a Britannia cue could be a great option for you. They're kind of mid-price, so you can pick one up between £100 and £300 depending on the specs that you're after. But what I really like about them is that they're specifically kind of engineered for this type of pull. You'll get them with quite a thin shaft, which works really well when you want to put spin on that small cue ball. I would recommend buying them from Table Time Sports, and if you drop my code in at the checkout, then you get a free membership to my paid content as well as some free gifts as well. One way to get the cue ball down the table when you've got a ball over the pocket like that is to play cushion first. But let me know in the comments if you've done this. To give yourself a bigger margin for error, play it with running side. So in this instance, it would be left-hand side. It means that you can hit further down the cushion, and when the cue ball hits that ball, it's going to want to travel that way as well because of the side spin. Okay, let's now pot this 8 ball. So instead of taking the midpoint between the cue ball and the object ball, we're going to take the midpoint between the cue ball and the contact point. So we need to contact it about there. The midpoint would be about here. Let's take that angle. That's about there. Let's shift it across carefully to the cue ball. And if we do that, we can pot the 8 ball. There are other cool things that you can do with the parallel shift. For example, let's say I want to pot this 8 ball. Now I can't because that's in the way. There is an angle of 2 cushions to pot it in here. So let's take this as a point that we want to contact. Again, we'll take the midpoint between there and our object ball, which is maybe about here. We'll take that angle to the pocket and we'll move it to the 8 ball. Now, if I move that to the 8 ball, that's about there. So let's say we want to hit that point. If we hit that point, then we can make that shot. There's always a bit of debate on this tip, so let me know in the comments what you think of it. When you've got a long straight shot, it can be a bit distracting to try and aim the object ball into the pocket. What you could try instead is aim your cue into the pocket. So if you get down on this shot, Make sure you're cueing straight, aim your cue right in the middle of the pocket, stay still, and as you deliver the cue through the cue ball, keep pointing at the middle of that pocket. Now if you do it, you should make the shot. You want your feathers to replicate the speed that you're going to play the shot at. So if you're just playing a slow one, then just nice slow feathers and through the ball. If you're playing it harder, then make your feathers go a bit faster. It's almost like a practice for the shot that you're about to play. When you put your chin on the cue, you don't want it exactly in the middle of your head because that's not where you should be cueing from. You should be cueing from your centre of vision. To work that out, place the cue pointing towards the middle of the pocket. Now keep it there. Now if you get down in the shot, I want you to look to see if it's still in the centre of the pocket. If you move your head, you'll see that the cue seems to change position. Get to a point where it looks right in the centre. Now that's where you always want to play from. You can see mine is very slightly to the right because I'm right eye dominant. I see quite a lot of beginners play jabby shots like this. What you need to remember is that your cue stroke goes from here all the way through to here. You want to think of that as one movement, one fluid stroke, and it should roughly be about the same speed from the very end of your backswing to the very front of your front swing. If you do that, you'll hit the ball much smoother. How far your bridge hand is from the cue ball can determine what type of player you are. If your bridge is pretty close to the cue ball, then it gives you a lot more control over that cue ball. You bring it further away and you'll be able to get a lot more power into the shot. A happy medium is put it about 10 inches from the cue ball. That gives you control and power. On all shots, you want to try and keep your cue as level as possible, even when you're playing with backspin. Now, when you're playing with backspin, you need to get down on the cue ball a bit. If your cue is over the cushion, it's going to raise it up slightly, so you can't get it perfectly level, but you should try and keep it as level as possible. If you're starting out at this game, then a good habit to get into is to stay down on your shot even after you've made contact with the object ball. Stay down on it until the cue ball stops moving. Here's two ways to make a double that might not look on. If I hit this full in the face, you can see I miss it. If I try and manipulate the angle, I'm going to get a double kiss. But there's a way that we can make this shot. So what we can do is we can hit the ball harder because it'll make the object ball square up off the cushion. And if we do that, we can make the shot. The other way to do it is to use spin. Now, whatever spin you put in the cue ball, it has the opposite effect on the object ball. So when I hit that plain ball, the object ball hit here. So I want to get the object ball spinning to the left to get it down there. So to do that, I put right hand spin on the cue ball. Did you know that you can use side spin to help you hold the cue ball? Let's say we want to finish these two balls and the black ball. Now if we pot that first one, you can see we're losing the cue ball. So now if I pot this one, the cue ball is going down there, and that's no good for getting an 8 ball. What I can do instead on that first shot is if I play it with left hand side, I can hit that yellow ball thicker, but the spin will spin it into the pocket. That means that I can hold the cue ball better for that one. Let's talk about trebles now. Now, a basic rule of thumb is that the object ball comes off the cushion at the same angle that it goes on. So if we wanted to treble that ball into that pocket, we would aim maybe about there, it would come off to about here, and then it would take the same angle into that pocket. Now, if we do that and we hit it soft, then you can see when it hit that second cushion, it slid off it and took a much wider angle. To avoid that happening, you want to hit the ball harder. So that means that you're not really aiming for this point. You're aiming to hit it further down because it's going to square up off that second cushion. So if we do that, let's change the angle a bit, hit it harder.
then we should be able to make the treble.
If you've got an awkward ball, you want to try and develop it as soon as possible, like this yellow ball here. It means that if you miss it the first time, you might have another shot at it. Also, if you do get the can in, because you've left a lot of balls on the table, you normally have at least one option for your next pot. So always try and take it out as early as possible.
If you need to play a swerve shot, then there's a real tendency to grip the cue tightly, but you can get much more swerve if you keep everything loose. If you can get your hand on the table to play a shot, then the length of your cue between your two hands is like that, okay? But if you've got a shot on the cushion, your bridge hand is much closer to the cue ball. So if you try and play like that again, just feel the strain. Look at my back elbow, it is extended. Your cue length is now that, and that means that you've got a lot more cue to control. So to counteract that, when you've got a shot on the cushion, you want to bring this hand way down your cue. This gives you a lot more control over the cue and in turn the cue ball. It can help a lot to use your chin or your chest as anchor points of the cue. For example, if you put your chin on the cue or if you've got your chest touching it, then it can stop that cue moving offline, especially when you're under pressure.
If you've got a snooker like this, then what a lot of players do is work out the point in the cushion that they need to hit to make contact with the red ball. An easier way to work it out is to stand behind the red ball and work out where you would need to hit the white ball. It's the exact same point in the cushion and works really well.
You're probably familiar with using spin to alter the position of the cue ball, but you can also do it with pace. For example, if I play the shot here and I hit it nice and soft, let's see where the cue ball ends up. So it hits the cushion about there. We can widen that angle just by hitting it harder. Because the cue ball is smaller than the object ball, it gets thrown off more with pace. So if we hit it harder, you can see we widen it so much more. I always find it's easier to use a closed bridge when your cue ball is near the cushion. If you use your open bridge, then you're lifting your cue up higher than you need to. That means that if you put a little bit of side on it, it's going to swerve the ball. You can get much lower if you use a closed bridge and let your cue rest on the cushion. You can use side spin to try and maneuver the cue ball after making contact with a ball on the cushion. For example, let's say I pot this red and I put left hand spin on it and cannon into the black. Then you can see I keep the cue ball down there. Once it hit the black, it wanted to go back there. Now if I put the opposite side on it, so if I put right hand side on it this time, bottom right, you'll notice that the cue ball runs to the right. Now that can make a huge difference when you're needing to play position.
To use a closed bridge, what you want to do is tuck your thumb under your hand. Try and keep it straight and then move the cue up to it. That keeps it in a straight line. Put your index finger over the cue, locking it in place, and then your middle finger can also give it further stability.
Sometimes you'll be in a snooker, but you know if you get out of it, you've got a chance of potting the ball. Now what a lot of people will do is that they go to that end of the table and they look at this cushion and they'll try and work out a point on that ball that they need to hit. I find it's easier to work from this end of the table. Now you know roughly where you need to hit that cushion in order to make contact with the 8-ball. The difficulty is making contact with the correct part of the 8-ball. So let's say we need to make contact round about there. What we can do is we can extend that point to the 8-ball, right? That's us looking like we're going to hit it full ball. If I move my cue to about there, so working out that I need to make contact about here. So I'm aiming for the correct contact point on the ball now. But if I extend that point further to the cushion, let's say I now need to make contact with here. I find that's an easier point to aim for the cue ball than that point. So if we aim to make the cue ball contact there, then we can pot that 8-ball.
The way I hit the cut break is I move the cue ball in from the cushion slightly. This allows me to hit the full cue ball without being hampered. I then aim to pot this yellow ball in the bottom right hand pocket, and it means that I'm consistently hitting the pack in the same place, and it works really well for me. It takes me a very long time to put together a video like this. There's a lot of filming and even more editing. So if you appreciate what I do, then please, please, please like and comment on this. If you've never done it before, then I want to hear from you. Please drop me a comment, even if it's to say hi. Thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next one.